share with you some of my thoughts and reflection. And I will start with a brief review of current situation in Poland, and the situation during the COVID-19 pandemic does not differ much from other countries, I guess. Unfortunately, the number of infected and victims of the virus does not decrease significantly. The lockdown is over now, but the pandemic continues. And now you can see some of the official statistics. And since 10th March, online learning has been mandatory not only at the University of Warsaw, but also at other universities in Poland. Suddenly, students and academic teachers were required to take all-day classes remotely. And indeed, since then, we have been experiencing a new reality. And I don't have time to discuss with you all the issues I would like to. However, there are a few questions that I want to outline. And this presentation is just a brief review of, I would say, my understanding and what I have learned recently about social pedagogy and university. I teach social research methods at University of Warsaw, and during my classes, students were asked to conduct different specific research tasks. They construct research tools like interviews, they prepare research projects, the other things that are related to the social research method curriculum. And while discussing an example of action research, students were asked to engage in a Photovoice study. Because of the pandemic, they could not go outside and explore, but they had to organize the research in their homes. I asked them to take the role of both researchers and research participants. And photos were used as a primary data. Their research task was to organize the whole research project and conduct the study. They were given only general guidelines. And during the study, which took 7 days, they took photos of their daily life, focusing on the research problem, communication, and social life during the coronavirus pandemic. And it was their decision how many photos they would take during the study. The main idea was that each photo is a specific story that needs to be told. Therefore, it was important to take pictures deliberately and intentionally, having in mind the research question. After taking photos, students were asked to choose only one of them and analyze it with few issues or questions I asked them. There were questions about the motives for taking the photo, about the content, and the general comments and reflection about the study. And after completing this research task, it was time to discuss what they discover. And it was clear for all of us, for me and for them, that this research task is not only about learning another social research method, but I will tell you about it a little later. Okay, so some examples. Now you can see and read some of student photos and statements. I attached just a few examples to show you the main idea. And I will start with a question: what are the photos about? And there were types of photos. First type was photos of loved ones. Students showed their friends, pets, siblings, family members, people and animals they love. The second type of photos were photos of devices which enable remote communication, mainly smartphones and computers. And we also can see some screenshots. And what they say about the photos they took. Students admit that personal contact with others and face-to-face communication cannot be replaced by online communication. Online communication is just one of the possibilities to communicate, but not the only one or not the kind of communication they prefer. On the one hand, students take advantage of the opportunities offered by new technologies. And on the other hand, they took advantage of the opportunities that exist. However, they are aware that online communication is not a substitute of face-to-face communication. And during the pandemic and the lockdown, it was the face-to-face communication that students missed, appreciated, and valued the most. The pandemic emphasized clearly that having a number of different online communication options does not invalidate the need for personal contact and face-to-face communication. And these statements show that it was difficult for students to live in a world where only online communication is possible. This research task has three main dimensions and meanings. A methodological one, which is related to the research results. An educational one, which is related to students, let's say, empowerment. And the third one, which is a community one, which is related to the student-teacher community. But first things first, looking at these photos and reading students' comments, I have the impression that the discussion about the smartphone generation has proved to be too general or even too narrow, because the pandemic shows clearly that being online is just part of the reality young people live in today. In student statements, they note that experience of lockdown made them realize how important face-to-face communication is for them and how they miss personal contact with other people in the everyday life. The second dimension is related to education. And my choice of Photovoice to be explored during classes was intentional and done on purpose. Photovoice as a part of action research is related to the idea of critical thinking, critical consciousness, and empowerment, the concepts that are at the heart of social pedagogy. And my aim with using Photovoice was to make students look more reflectively and consciously on their everyday life and their social relationships. And this is the point where we meet the last dimension I want to discuss. And this last dimension turned out to be particularly significant in times of the pandemic. Sharing photos has become, in my opinion, a part of sharing stories. And sharing stories about fears, doubts, emotions became the reflection that is far beyond personal experience. And it is particularly important for me because it shows the need to be caring and care for students, care for a student-teacher community. This research task remind us, me and my students, then that university is not a market of knowledge. University is a community of people, and community is not about transferring knowledge. It is about sharing stories, which means it is about communication. Of course, there are different kinds and different ways of communication regarding different situations. But one thing is for sure, communication is a key. Communication makes the community. And I think this is the point where a new discussion should begin. And I hope that we will start it together today. Thank you.